Before we begin this digital event, we want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. As many of us are watching in locations all around Australia, we pay our respects to the traditional owners of the country on which we all live and work. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and community, and pay our respects to them and their culture, and to the elders both past, present, and future.
Hi everybody, welcome to yet another great episode of New Breakpoint. My name's Simon Waite. Have we got a great show lined up for you today? If you do have questions while the show's underway, please make sure to put them into the chat and our team will be on hand to answer them. We'll choose one or two great questions right until the end, and our guest speaker for today will be here to answer them for you live in the studio. As is always the way, if you are looking to contribute, make sure that you're doing it in accordance with our code of conduct. Keep an eye on your inbox if you're watching this live for further details about how you can watch and share this episode after today's show. And please do check out the debug log, which we'll put up at the end of the show. Okay, let's get on our great guest speaker for today. Today I'm going to be joined by Rajan from Microsoft here in Australia. He's one of our cloud solution architects working in the app dev space, and he spends his time helping our customers maximize the benefit that they get out of working with the Azure cloud. He's got a great topic for us today. He's going to talk about PHP and Laravel and how you can migrate those to Azure App Service. Let me get him on the show and we'll have a quick chat and then it'll be over to him to get started. All right, so now I'm joined by Rajan, who's our guest speaker for today. Welcome to New Breakpoint, Rajan.
Yeah, thank you.
Look, I know you do a lot of work out in the field with our great customers. Do you want to tell everyone out there a little bit about yourself and what you do for us here at Microsoft?
Sure. So my name is Rajan. I'm a cloud solution architect. My area of expertise is mostly around application development and modernization. So I work with a lot of mostly the top 100 customers here across their various websites and AI and ML scenarios, and then basically bring them into cloud and modernized environment, and mostly sticking to serverless Azure PaaS services.
Okay.
So
great.
Yeah, I work with a lot of top 100 to top 500 customers here in Australia, and what I've seen is PHP still has a massive footprint on premise. And one question that keeps coming in our conversation with customer is how to actually migrate this PHP workloads into Azure, and they're still looking at serverless PaaS offerings, to keep VMs and infrastructure at bay. I did some reading into it, and surprisingly, I found out still more than 25% of on-prem applications use PHP, and they are as old as PHP 5 to PHP 7. So I thought in this Breakpoint session today, I'm going to just give an example on how we can pick up Laravel, which is a very common small to mid size framework in PHP, and bring it to Azure serverless.
All right, fantastic. Looks like it's going to be an interesting topic. I'm not going to be much help hanging around on screen while you're presenting. So I'm going to hop off the stream at this point. I'll be back on a little bit later to help wrap up the show. Really looking forward to this. Please make sure you hang around. If you've got any questions, again, put them into the chat and we'll get them either during the session or at the end of the show. In the meantime, over to you, Rajan, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, so in this session, we are going to look at few Azure PaaS services that are very commonly used when we are doing a website deployment. We are not going to go very deep into the CI/CD setup and monitoring and operational. We can pick those up in other sessions. What I want to show today is how we pick up just a front end and the back end of any small to mid-size application, or even the large workloads, which are mostly 2 or 3 tier, and bring them into a PaaS environment in Azure. This is a typical reference architecture of a website that I've shared on my screen. We would just be looking at Azure App Services today. This is where my PHP or the Laravel or any other PHP framework code can be deployed. And we'll spin up a MySQL database to host the backend. Okay, So before we go into the actual deployment, I'm going to go into my Azure portal and just bring up these Azure services, and then I'll show them one by one how we are going to set these up for my Laravel stack. So first I'll bring up the front end, which is my web app. I have a lot of resource groups, so I'm going to just pick up a demo one and name my application as, say, demo Laravel 1. So this is an app service. You will see that we support a lot of runtimes. It is just not limited to .NET or PHP. Even if you have like a Java or a Node or even a Golang or Python front end, you can host it pretty easily here. So I'm going to show PHP 7.4 because that's the demo code I'm going to be using ahead. You have a selection of which operating system you want to use. PHP framework tends to go pretty okay with Linux. So I'm going to show you a Linux demo here. I'll pick up Australia East as my zone and leave all the settings at default and just bring this up. So it does my validation. I picked up a Linux app service, which is a serverless PaaS front-end environment, and set the runtime to 7.4 Australia East and bring it up. Now, while this deployment is happening, I'll bring up my backend database, which is going to be Azure MySQL. So I'll go here in my databases, I'll pick up MySQL. So you see we have a lot of open source databases support here. It's just not Azure SQL or Cosmos. We have a Azure PaaS offering for Postgres, MySQL, Redis, and there are a few more coming up soon. So I'll go pick up MySQL. So we have an option to bring up either a single server, which spans around my different availability zone in Australia East, or if you want to do a bit of custom settings on your own MySQL cluster, you can pick up the flexible server, which gives you more access to the MySQL low-level settings. For this particular demo, I'm going to just keep it simple and pick up a single server. Select the main, the same resource group, and give a name to this database. Select my region here. I'm going to just go with a simple basic tier. You can pick up a higher tier if you have more IOP requirements. We go up to 64 core, and they tend to have very high IOP. So we can even support, extremely high traffic websites here on a PaaS offering of MySQL database. Select, I'm going to just give it a basic username and password. I would recommend to have very strict passwords. I'm going to just pick up a simple one for now for demo purposes. And we are going to create this. Now the database server usually takes around 3 to 4 minutes to come up. So we're just going to take a small pause and wait for the environment to come up. So after a few minutes, you will see that even the MySQL server is up. So before we go into web app and basically see how we can set up a PHP application, I'm quickly going to access my MySQL server and do some settings here and basically set up a blank database, which my Laravel application will use ahead. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the connection security here and just allow access to Azure services and my IP so that I can set up a blank database. And one another thing that I'm going to do is basically disable SSL for this demo. You can enforce SSL, and we do provide a certificate that your application can use to connect back to database. But currently I'm using a sample application which does not have SSL settings, so we are just going to disable it for now. So I'm going to just click on save and give it a minute so that these settings are saved. And while you do that, while that happens, I'll just show you what is your MySQL server is all about. So you will see it's a PaaS serving, which basically gives you option to do all your settings and monitoring settings that you usually do with a typical VM environment. So we have inbuilt monitoring, intelligence, and connection security setup. If you go to the overview page here, you will see that the server name and admin login is already provided to you, and you can basically use these details to access your MySQL cluster. There is some detailed, resource utilization and other monitoring inbuilt into the system that can be leveraged from time to time. If you pick up higher tier of MySQL Server, you will also see that we have options to do, read replica on the fly. You don't have to spend time, creating your own read environments for MySQL cluster. It's just few button clicks here and it takes care of everything. So my security settings are updated. So I'm going to just use these settings here to access my server. So let's see. So I'm going to go to new, use the server name, use the password. Oh, sorry, login and my password. Yeah, I'm in. So you'll see the 4 default databases are already there. I'm going to just go ahead and create one for myself. You can create multiple databases on one Azure PaaS server. So this one, let's create one demo Laravel 1. And that's it. And that's all I need to do on a MySQL server. Now we are going to have a look at the front end hosting option, which is my app service, and see how we can set up a Laravel application here. So as I said earlier, we are not going to look deep into CI/CD for PHP applications. We can have a look at that in some other sessions. So here, what we'll basically do is log in into the SSH console and see how, even though this is a PaaS service, we do give all the coders certain degree of flexibility to run their own commands. The typical commands you need for a PHP application, like Composer or PHP Artisan or anything related to Git, and set up your applications manually or replicate the same on a CI/CD setup. So go to SSH. And then I will log into my www root folder, which is where I usually deploy my applications. So this is a default path for the web server. You deploy your application here, and using the URLs, you should be able to access whatever you have deployed. So for this demo purpose, I've already pre-selected a simple to-do application. So I'm going to just pick that up and see if I can set it up as part of this demo. So the first thing is to basically just update my Linux. Then I need to have Git installed here so that I can pull the code. So you see I have flexibility to install certain applications that my application needs from time to time. Just remember that this is not a persistent storage. Only the code deployed here within the www root folder is persistent. Anything else that you install is usually installed outside my www root folder, and you can lose at any time. So this is not a persistent storage. Whatever I'm doing will mostly limit to the session, and after that it's gone again. So I got my Git working here. Now I'm going to just pull that application that I selected for demo. Yeah, my application is here. The next thing I want to do before I set up my application is to update my connection string and point to the database that I've just set up. So you will see in this example, I already have a sample environment file. So I'm just going to move this and create my actual environment file for this demo, which is going to be .env. So .env is the standard config file that most of the Laravel application uses, and that's what we are going to update here. So I have access to Nano in this terminal. So, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and change the connection strings here. With the name of database, you can just scroll down and click on available resources, and it will show you the database that you have just set up. Is that here? And lastly, I'll enter the password that I have set up earlier, which is Just want to verify my details. I have access to cat. So yeah, you will see that my database settings are now updated. The next step here is basically to install Composer, because we will need Composer to pull all the packages that my Laravel application uses. By default, no application which is deployed, which is saved onto Git has these packages there by default. We just put the reference for those in package.json file. And then in production, we run our Composer and commands to basically pull these packages and set those up. So we are going to replicate that process here. So if you look into this code here, it has a package.json file already. And we are going to now try and pull all these packages. So if you do a quick check, Composer is easily available. I'm going to just run a few PHP commands and get that installed here. So get my setup. I'm going to run the setup. Yeah, it's installed successfully. I'm going to just unlink it. And now the next step is to basically install all the packages. So PHP Composer. This process can take up to 3 to 4 minutes based on number of packages. I have around 115 packages, so let's see how long it takes. That's pretty quick today. So after a few minutes, you will see that all your packages are installed. And the quick way to verify is to basically have a look at the directory, root directory again, and see if window folder here is installed, which it is. So that will have all the packages pulled, which are defined here in package.json. So at this point, usually your website is set up and ready to run, but in Laravel, you need to do a few more things because it works on code first. So the two things that we need to do is basically set up a Laravel key and then run migrations, which will update my database and create all the tables which are used by this application. So first we will see if installing my packages has created the artisan command, which I can use ahead. It has. So the next thing I'll do is basically generate the key. And then run my migrations. Yeah, so you will see here it's creating all the tables in my database, which I can now go ahead and use. So once that is done, the last thing here is to basically set up my web server. By default, if you go into a web app, and let me show it to you here, and if you go into configurations, it doesn't allow you to basically change the root path of your applications, especially in Linux operating systems web app. So at this point, you are ready to basically run your application. But there is one thing that you need to take care of. It is around your web server settings. By default, everything is put into www root folder, which is my web server root. But if you're aware of PHP frameworks, what you would know is all the assets are basically in my public folder. And that's where my base index.php file is. So what I need to do is, as a last step, basically set up a HTTP redirection that will point to public folder here as my base folder. So I already have a base htaccess file here with me, which I'm just going to create now. So let's see. Access. So yeah, if all is working okay, my PHP application is now good to run. So let's give it a go and check. So I can go back to the view of my app service, and I will have a default URL here. You can always change this URL into your custom domain, but I'm going to use what's already provided. And just click here. Yeah, and my application is up. So just to give it a go and see everything is working okay, I'm going to register. Yeah, and it works fine. So what we saw here today is how we took up one of the widely used PHP frameworks, Laravel, and installed it into a serverless environment. We can replicate the same for any other PHP environment by just setting that particular PHP runtime on a web app. So you can pick up Cake PHP, Coordinator, even WordPress websites. We even tried to install Drupal on web app, and it works out fine. And yeah, go from a VM-based environments to something totally modern. Over to you, Simon.
Okay, I'm back. Thanks a lot, Rejan. That was a great demonstration. I do love seeing the SSH command line on a Linux app service instance. I must admit, I haven't used it like that before, so I've learned something new today by attending this session. Thank you very much for that. Now, obviously, the demo you did there was very much based off of command line tooling. I think you mentioned that, you know, potentially there's some low levels of repeatability in what you did there because of the nature of app service. So what is the more structured continuous integration and deployment story for PHP and app service? Do you have something you can share with us on that?
Yeah, so we have pretty extensive support for various type of PHP frameworks in Azure DevOps, GitHub, and even it'll build into app services. So just to give you an example, if you just have a look at GitHub Actions, which is now extensively used to do various CI/CD pipelines, we do have PHP Actions already available, and you can run use those to deploy your applications into Azure. If you're new to CI/CD and you want something very straightforward, we have like CI/CD pipelines already made for you in app services. So if you come here and click on Deployment Center and just give a path to your GitHub repository or Azure DevOps or any other repository where you have saved your code, and just give a path here, like I said, let me show you the GitHub example. You will see there, once you authorize and give a path to your repository, it has already selected the PHP runtime stack, and it will create all the pipelines for you. So then all you need to do is worry about your code, and every time you do some changes to your code and push it to your branch that you select here, the code will get deployed and you can test it straight away.
Yeah, it's great to know that you're not having to play with Composer at a command line every time you do a push deploy to app service. Look, fantastic session. Thank you very much again, Rejan, for that demo. We are going to open it up now for any questions that anybody might have. So Rejan will be joining me on a live Q&A for the next few minutes. So if you do have any questions, please make sure you put them in the chat and we'll get to them as part of this next segment. So we'll see you in a minute.